to bring attention to all the rotten things done in its name. There's a lot of lying, a lot of dying.
So basically, Michael, the issue wasn't settled in 1989?
No, it continues to linger on. As a matter of fact, Dredd brings out a lot of contemporary issues of flag burning, and certainly it's important to place these developments in a greater social and historical context. I should point out that in my analysis of the flag burning controversy, wartime is a very important social context. Dating back to the Revolution, the U.S. flag was in and of itself a desecration of the British flag. And in fact, at the time of the birth of the nation, there were very few specified patterns of the flag, and this developed over time. There were very few mechanisms or regulations of how the flag was to be used or displayed until about the Civil War, and that's when we have the first Flag Day in 1861. The Union flag became popular because, of course, it was used as a national emblem. It was also used to offset the power of the Confederacy, etc., etc. The Union flag was draped over public buildings, government buildings, flags, homes, and it wasn't until after the Civil War that there were fewer. I guess again the term that I use is regulation of the use of the flag. It became popular to use the U.S. flag in advertising. It became popular in terms of dress and fashion. But again, wartime is a very important social context, and
Hasn't it always been illegal or improper to dress in the flag?
No, as a matter of fact, let me answer that question in a moment. We'll bring you up historically from the Civil War until the First World War, when from roughly years 1910 to about 1920, there was an emphasis on the Americanism, which they introduced citizenship training, in which the Pledge of Allegiance was introduced as a regular routine in grammar schools. There was greater emphasis on what was construed as to be a real American, and it wasn't until actually the Second World War that there were some challenges to the use of the flag. More specifically, the rather strict application of citizenship training on young people, and this was a case involving the Jehovah's Witnesses, in which in a case that reached the Supreme Court, the Jehovah's Witnesses were challenging a school-wide requirement to force students to salute the flag, and the Jehovah's Witnesses interpreted that as a form of idolatry. And it's interesting that we look at the Minersville case, as it's known, as a rather interesting development in the flag burning controversy, because what we're really talking about is what Robert Bell, a famous sociologist, refers to as civil religion. That is, that patriotism has become equated with a form of secular religion. And he writes about civil religion in terms of attaching sacred meaning to otherwise secular symbols, placing phrases such as "in God we trust" on the currency, using references to God in oaths and pledges, etc., etc. So we see that as part of the contemporary debate about flag desecration, and it's interesting that we even use the term desecration, which is to suggest that we are in some way challenging the sacred meaning of the flag.
So how long has flag burning always been a political act?
Well, in the 1960s, my recollection is 1967, the Supreme Court, Congress passed the first Flag Protection Act. And what's interesting is once again, wartime is a very important social context, and this is in the Vietnam era. And Abbie Hoffman was one of the first people to be prosecuted under that law. However, he he didn't desecrate the flag in a traditional sense of burning it. He tailored it into a flag shirt. And when he was escorted into court, interestingly enough, as the story goes, he anticipated being challenged by the court officers since he wore his shirt to court. Naturally, they unexpectedly they pounced him, they tackled him, and they ripped the shirt off his back, only to reveal a tattoo on his back, which was the Viet Cong flag. So he enters into court without a shirt on, with the Viet Cong flag tattooed to his back, and he says to the judge that he regrets only having one shirt to give to his country. But that was the first one of the first cases involving formalized or codified laws. What's interesting about the Abby Hoffman case is that at the same time you could turn on the television, you could see Dale Evans and Roy Rogers market dog food, also wearing flag shirts. So there was clearly a double standard, and wartime is a very important context because an individual's political views are, especially if they're not mainstream and if they challenge the government's notion of foreign policy, then one is subject to greater scrutiny, and Dredd has certainly indicated that.